Hi, my name is Joseph Alai. Welcome to my channel. And today I want to talk about a little mini series that I'm going to be going through, and it's called Your Predictive Future. So this idea or that phrase particularly keeps popping into my head, and recently I've been inquiring and writing down certain assumptions that ultimately I would manifest the knowledge of what to make a little mini series on, which is kind of like a new direction in my channel, to do multi-series videos teaching you through step-by-step instructions and stories of how to get whatever you want in your entire life, anything at all that you can possibly imagine, through the art of manifestation. And so this is the part one of the Predictive Future series. And before we begin, I want to recommend you hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you can get notified for more videos in this series. Also hit the like button. It does something to the algorithm so that those people who would not normally be able to see this video will be able to see this video. And let's just jump right into it then. So the world without, if we look at ourselves from the mindset of before we knew how to manifest, everything is random and chaotic to the most, or at least to the standard person's understanding, in the sense of we can have a very small influence or impact on what can happen in the future. And also it's very difficult to predict what is going to unfold. And so that leaves us ultimately in a state of minimal power, powerless to the external events, powerless to what's going to happen. And it's very difficult to predict or to prepare ourselves for what's going to unfold. But ultimately, once we stumble upon manifestation, or the power to create through our imagination, or the power to rearrange, modify, or ultimately push out into our experience the world that we wish to experience, once we stumble upon that, we ultimately can find, if we look close enough, that we do have more power than we think. We can predict the future. The future, if we could predict the future, if you could predict the future, how much power would you have? How much more control over your experience would you have? How much more peace of mind would you have, knowing what's going to happen and then ultimately how to prepare for that to happen? So imagine that you had the power to ultimately predict, and not only predict, but to create the future that you're going to experience. What would you think of how different your life would be? Now, this is something, like I said, if we're just getting into manifestation, it may be a little bit difficult to comprehend what I'm talking about. But as we go along, we can see that through observing the external world, thinking about what we're thinking about, seeing what other people are saying, analyzing our dreams, and other facets of our awareness, or the things that we're aware of, we can ultimately not only predict, but modify and create the world that we want. So that's what this is about. Now, what does that have to do with manifestation in general, or how does manifestation apply to this? So the truth is that the whole world, our experience, anything that we experience, or in other words, everything that we experience, exists somewhere in our awareness or in our consciousness. So that means that we cannot experience anything that has not been first existing in our awareness. Now, that if you reflect back on your experience, right, and I'll kind of narrow down what that statement means a little bit more, but we can realize then that everything that we have seen, anything we've touched, anything that we have utterly experienced in our reality has first been in some way existed in our consciousness and then impressed upon our subconscious mind and then manifested outward on the screen of space. But how does that lead into predicting the future? Well, there are certain things called signs, right? A sign that something is coming. There's certain things called dreams or premonitions or visions. But ultimately, everything that we are staring at, everything that we are experiencing is constantly screaming at us for what is about to happen, or showing us the contents of our mind. So by simply observing everything in the external world, observing our thoughts, thinking about our dreams, referring back to what someone said to us yesterday, we can ultimately get an idea of what is to come. But there is a great benefit to figuring out what is to come, but there's an even greater benefit to being able to deliberately set what is to come. And so ultimately that is what most manifestation teachers or manuals or techniques are referring to, which is ultimately deciding what you wish to experience and then manifesting it, right? And the manifestation process is simply being able to observe something in your imagination and then ultimately watching that pan out on the screen of space. So with those separate entities, we can ultimately make a good framework as to what we can expect in our life, and we can sharpen these skills of observing, and we can also create more things by imagining more things, which gives us an even greater understanding or predictability of what the future is going to hold. So that's the generality, that's the summary of it. And I want to go quickly into the process of creation, and then we'll get into some more stuff. So what's the process of creation? So the one that gives us the most power, right, out of the predictive future, the one that allows most control, the one that can change the external world in any way that we can imagine, and also change our internal world, such as our personality, our feelings, thoughts, our health, our basically mental frame, manifestation. So when we imagine something, right, it's going to happen, right? So that's the general way to describe it. When we imagine something, it will be manifested on the screen of space. But there are very specific ways that we can utilize this, right? And there are various techniques that we can use to place a marker into the future that is guaranteed for us to experience it. There's a lot of writing about this that has been kind of pushed into the world over the last few thousand years, right? It's not just New Age thought, Neville Goddard, Abraham Hicks, Joseph Murphy, Joseph Dispenza. It's not just, those are not the writings of something that is brand new, right? The book that I study the most is actually the Bible. And ultimately, the Bible, if you read it in the way that I read it, which is not the way that most people read it, it is a manual or a guide of how to manifest anything in this world, but not only manifest physical things, but also having to do with spiritual, manifesting wisdom, mystical experiences, and then also, like I said, tangible things, abundance, health, wealth, love, happiness, things to that degree. But so the techniques involved that I extract from these books, these things that are not new, that have always been there, at our disposal, what we want to do is ultimately define our end result, the thing that we wish to manifest on the screen of space, right? Taking these very specific techniques, and then somehow impress it upon our subconscious mind, right? The subconscious mind is the female aspect of the mind. It is what we are not conscious of, but it exists somewhere. It feeds our conscious mind, memories. It helps us to reflect upon past events and make valid decisions. It also regulates our health, all the cells in our body, but it's also connected to everyone else in the universe by the medium of a field, or what I call awareness, or God. So if our imagination is creating our experience, then how can we utilize it in a exacting way, a specific way, a tangible way, a predictable way, so that we can place these markers into the future that must push themselves out, that we must experience? So the very specific, definite technique, and the most powerful one, as I said, to predicting a future, is to create it through this very simple technique. The idea is that we define an end result that we wish to experience. We define something that, if this event is happening, it means that I've already achieved my goal. If this event that I'm imagining is occurring, then there is nothing possible that could deter me from having already received it, right? So in other words, We define a scene after our desire has already been fulfilled. And when I say define a scene, I mean an imaginal act. A concise, a short, an accurate, a specific imaginal act that's generally a few seconds long so that we can get a high rate of impression upon the subconscious mind. From the point of view of yourself, as a person who has already received your desire. So then you ask yourself, what is it that you want? What is it that you want? If you want to be rich, if you want to be married, if you want to be healthy, if you want to be healed, if you want other people to be healthy or healed, you define a scene, an imaginary scene, something that if it were actually happening, it would prove beyond any doubt whatsoever that that person involved already is the person that you want them to be. Maybe I am rich in this imaginal scene and I'm driving around a very expensive car. Or maybe my friend is rich because I want that friend to be rich and they're driving around in a very expensive car. Maybe I'm married, sitting with someone with my wedding ring on and them with their wedding ring on. We go to a scene which implies it's done. That means there's no wiggle room to think, oh, could it have happened already? No, you want it to be at a time and space where there's no ambiguity. It's absolutely finished. It's done. And what you want to do from that point, as I said, a very specific phrase that I use is you want to think from the point of view of yourself in the future, right? From the point of view of yourself in the future. So that means looking through your own eyes, not through a lens staring at you from the distance. No, you want to actually, just as you are looking at me now, you don't see your own face, you're looking at me. Maybe you can raise your hands up and see your hands, but you want to be looking through your own eyes from the point of view of yourself in the future where you already are that person. Now, if someone else is the target of your desire, if you want someone to be healed, if you want someone to be loved, if you want someone to be happy, if you want someone to be rich, still look from the point of view of your own eyes, but imagine looking at them and speaking to them or watching them performing some action which would indicate that they already have achieved that goal. They already are that person. And once you define and outline the scene, which I normally do on a piece of paper almost every single time still, I bring that into my imagination, I close my eyes, bring it into my imagination, and reenact that scene over and over and over and over again until all effort has vanished, all force has vanished, and it becomes a natural working part of my mind as if I am truly experiencing it. And I'm thinking from that point of view. Which means, what am I seeing? What am I thinking? What am I tasting? What am I touching? Who is there? Who is talking to me? What's going on? We take that and we replay it over and over and over again. And what happens is once we do this, ultimately, once we reach that point of non-effort, we reach that point of naturalness, we reach that point of non-force, it will impress upon our subconscious mind because the side effect of playing the scene over and over also generates the emotion that goes with it, right? Because if you're really there and you're really experiencing it, then you're going to, as a side effect of this action itself, the feelings will come in too. All of these together make for a perfect impression upon the subconscious mind. And then you have set your marker into the future, which is basically step one of creating your predictive future. Now, what will happen next, I'm going to touch upon in the next video. But ultimately, what will begin to happen is you will go on a bridge of incidents. You may see some signs. You may hear people talk about certain things. You may have certain dreams. There are various ways to predict what is going to happen. Set up your future in this way, and it doesn't matter what it is that you're imagining. It doesn't matter because all things are possible. When we're drawing upon our imagination, it's an eternal well of possibilities that we select into, mark it, and then it must manifest in our future. And there's a couple verses in the scripture that talk about this. One of them is, every place that the sole of your foot shall tread, that have I given to you. Which basically means in your imagination, when you go somewhere, when you place your imaginary feet there, when you become present there in that imaginary scene, you will receive that. You will encounter that in the exact nature of the thing that you've imagined. So ultimately, up next, I want to talk about certain things that are going to unfold after, and then how to kind of predict by that other ultimate ends. and how you can see if you're on the right track and what you can do about it. But that was essentially the first video in the Predictive Future series. I hope you liked it. Stay tuned for the next one by clicking subscribe and the bell icon to get notified not only for more series, but also step-by-step videos on how to manifest anything that you want through literal time-tested experimentation, systematic, predictable techniques. So also hit the like button and stay tuned for more. Thank you so much.